Hello and welcome to the Access Vikings podcast. I'm Emily Leiker, joined by my Minnesota Star Tribune colleagues, Ben Goessling and Andrew Krammer. We all made it back to Minneapolis after very few hours of sleep and a long night following the Vikings' fourth quarter comeback win, 27-24 against the Bears at Soldier Field. You guys told me this was going to be an insane game because they always are at Soldier Field. And it delivered. JJ McCarthy also delivered. And I have to say, referencing the Gen Z piece I wrote last week, he had a lot of aura in the fourth quarter of this game. And Ben, that was the focus of obviously the game story was this kind of start for McCarthy where he didn't look great at the beginning of the game, but by game's end, you just saw everything that the Vikings have been talking about in terms of him as a quarterback for the past 500 days since they drafted him.
Yeah, he had Sigma Riz. What can I say? I mean, that's what it comes down to, Emily. So
that was bad.
That was mostly to whatever Gen Z people rolled their eyes at that, whether it was you or my daughters. If they hear this, mission accomplished. I don't care. So if I get a laugh, great. If I get an eye roll, even better. Anyway, JJ McCarthy. Yeah, he had a good game, or a good fourth quarter, I should say. After the interception, he was 8 of 11 for 95 yards, 2 touchdowns, and obviously has the one to give them a 10-point lead on the read option play that put the game not quite out of reach, but made the last touchdown the Bears scored kind of immaterial. It was, I thought early on, everything looked kind of almost play not to lose, and everything seemed a little tight. Everything seemed, kind of conservative, and let's not make it too difficult on him. He said the throw before halftime to Jalen Nailor, it was a throw before halftime that set up the field goal to Jalen Nailor, was kind of the first one that made him feel like he's getting into a little bit of a rhythm. But it really wasn't until they got behind that they started to have to play a little more loosely that you started to see him hit some throws and just pull everything together. But the big thing, like you alluded to, was the way he galvanized teammates. He said in the huddle to them as they're trying to come back, hey, where else would you rather be? What other place would you want to be right now than doing this together? And that's very JJ. I mean, a lot of what you'll hear him talk about is even the challenging moments or opportunities to overcome something or opportunities to learn or grow. And, that fits very much into the way we hear him talk about a lot of things. And I think that message resonated with teammates. I mean, Aaron Jones at his locker last night was awfully impressed by the maturity and the poise that McCarthy had in that moment. And Aaron Jones has played with some guys in this league that have had a little bit of success at the position. So whether it was him, Justin Jefferson, I think Brian O'Neill, I mean, a lot of the veteran players seem like they've bought in to the 22-year-old, and Kevin O'Connell certainly is as bought in as he's been. There were a lot of things to clean up, a lot of mistakes, but the aura that he brought to the table was a big part of the reason they make the comeback, and he becomes the first to make a fourth quarter comeback of that size in his first start since Steve Young, who also was pretty good at the position.
Yeah, I think what the word that stuck out to me, what the guys kept using, was just the resiliency. You mentioned Brian O'Neill. After the game, he had said that it was after the pick six, and JJ just kind of had a moment where he told people on the sideline, like, hey, we're still going to do this. We're still in this, essentially believe. And Brian was like, guys can say that in moments, and you're like, all right, cool. But like, you kind of believed it when he said it. And from a 22-year-old, it's pretty impressive. And so I think the resiliency that he showed, and the fact that you mentioned Steve Young, another guy who just did not fold when the chips were stacked against him. And so this is a great sign for JJ moving forward, the intangible factor. And that's the thing that I see people making fun of it online on social media about, well, if you can only say a guy's, have high character and is a leader, but you can't really say much about him, then he must not be very good. And it's because of like what you guys pointed out. He hadn't played a game in 600 days. Well, no kidding, we weren't talking about anything else because we hadn't seen anything else for 600 days until now. And so now we can talk about the game. We can talk about his athleticism. We can talk about the read option that they put him in. We can talk about all the things they can do combined with the intangibles he just displayed in his first start. It's got to be incredibly exciting for the Vikings and where they're at. I mean, yeah, they won the game, and yeah, they're not going to win every game, but what he showed, you got to just be happy about if you're a Vikings fan.
Well, and like how many times over the years in conversations about JJ McCarthy's predecessor, especially, have we had the discussion of that thing at the quarterback position, that alpha, that the guy that people look toward and rally around, just that whatever that thing is, that it factor. It's hard to quantify it. It's hard to rank it. We don't have analytics that measure it completely, or really at all. But there is something to that position. I mean, Kevin O'Connell talked about this when they were going through the draft process last year. He said quarterbacks change the buildings and the rooms that they're in just by the way they go about their daily process. They understand that the spotlight is on them. They understand that they are the ones that everybody is keying off of, and everybody needs to kind of find some level of excitement, encouragement, hope, whatever, in the sense that you have that guy in the building. So you can't necessarily put a stopwatch or a camera on that, but people that play this position and coach it believe that it's an important factor. And the guy that I saw in my mentions a few times last night, and this is really, 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 I think that was 7, premature, but that type of poise. People mention Tom Brady, and I'm not saying he's Tom Brady, but
yeah, I see it.
It's a long way from that. But just that way of going about the job is kind of what reminds people of that, I think.
I mean, ESPN's Seth Wickersham, who covered the Patriots in their, at the beginning of the Tom Brady era, did tweet last night that he saw a lot of similarities between that game and some of the early Tom Brady era stuff. So it is not just fans in your mentioned, Ben. There are other people saying that and positing that out there. But yeah, I mean, the intangibles, I think, are what takes a good QB to a great QB to a legendary one, right? Like, you can be super talented, but if you're not also able to do the leadership, do the comeback moments like last night, you're not going to be a legendary QB. You're never going to get there, because you have to have those in terms of the leadership. And Ben, you mentioned obviously what McCarthy said in the huddle, the where else would you rather be comment. And I thought it was interesting. He wasn't really sure where that came from post game. He was like, I don't know if I've heard that from someone else, if that just kind of came out of my head in the moment, what so be it. But it kind of reminded me of some sentiments we were hearing last week, where the Vikings didn't want to put pressure on this game and the debut of it being Monday Night Football and against the Bears, a division rival. But they did want to use those circumstances to kind of encourage JJ and remind him hey, you made it. This is your moment to shine, and do it in front of all these people. And so I think it's interesting that that's kind of the phrasing he went with to then go encourage the team.
Yeah, that kind of, I was just going to say, that kind of mindfulness, it screams JJ McCarthy, but it also screams Kevin O'Connell. It also screams just kind of the coaching, Josh McCown, Wes Phillips, the minds that they put around him. It just kind of screams that they're not trying to judge this based on a play-to-play or game-to-game basis in terms of freaking out by the results. It's all about the process, and the process is the sayings that you hear over and over, be where your feet are and all this stuff. That's how he eventually can overcome the nerves, the anxiousness, the anxiety of not playing in 600 days. And that's how he can not give up, right away. Where so many other guys, I think rookies, especially young guys, would have folded in that spot, and he didn't.
Yeah, one other thing to mention from last night, I got a text. I was texting with Greg Holcomb, JJ's personal quarterbacks coach, who talked with quite a bit for the story I did in quarterback development at the beginning of the season. I'm just looking through this here. He said he was obviously in the stands last night because he's in the Chicago area, so was sitting around a bunch of Bears fans that were giving him a hard time after McCarthy threw the interception. Greg said that he turned around to them. You watch how he responds. He's a stone cold killer, and he's going to snatch the momentum right back. And then he wrote, mic drop, walk off. So, I mean, pretty much that's you don't want to be living that way with the interceptions, but there's going to be those moments with him. There's going to be some of these things where he has to learn and have some of those mistakes on the fly. But whatever that unspeakable it factor is that quarterbacks have, he showed it last night.
Well, if you're watching on video, you probably could tell there that we had some technical difficulties. Ben has dropped out, but Andrew and I are going to finish up the rest of the pod here and talk the rest of the game outside of JJ McCarthy, because as much as last night was the JJ McCarthy show, both before, during, and after, other things happened. And, there were a couple bright spots, especially early in that early portion of the game where we were like, is McCarthy going to be able to get this one back on track? One of those bright spots was running back Jordan Mason, who all training camp, pretty much from the moment that he was acquired via trade with the 49ers back in March, we had kind of been talking about like this is a guy who's going to come in and he's really going to make a difference because of his physicality. He just likes to barrel through guys. And that's exactly what we saw him do last night. And he got he moved the chains for the first time for the Vikings all night with a pair of 6-yard runs. He came back later with some 18, 19-yard rushes. Like, he didn't have anything that was like too crazy. He never totally broke free and had like an open field or anything like that. But I ended up writing about this morning. You could really see the vision they have for this running back room between Mason and Aaron Jones in the way they used them last night.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think when you looked at it, people were wondering, is it going to be a 60-40, 70-30, 50-50 split? Technically, it was a 54-50 split. They love these guys so much. It's over 100. They put them both on the field at the same time for multiple plays. And you saw, as you mentioned, the vision was on display when they were both on the field, because it would be Jordan Mason in the backfield, Aaron Jones split out wide. They used Aaron as a receiver, motioning out wide quite a bit, and just tried to use, I think, all those eligible receivers to help JJ get a grip of what the coverage is going to be. When you go empty as an offense, it's a lot harder for a defense to continue trying to disguise things. You have to kind of flare out and match up with your responsibilities before the snap. So Kevin O'Connell used that a lot to help JJ, it would seem. And Aaron, having a versatile back like him who can do that, even when you also maybe might want to have Mason in the backfield too, is a great weapon, and really such a versatile backfield that they have not had in Minnesota really since, I don't know, Latavius Murray, Jerick McKinnon, but that was obviously lesser versions of the two players they have now. So it's great. It's a good sign for the Vikings. And frankly, Mason's involvement was no shock to me or you or really anybody who was paying attention.
No, and I think there will, like, it wasn't like the best all-around running performance, mainly because they didn't utilize the run game a ton in the first half. And that's something Kevin O'Connell mentioned after the game. He said, look, that's a growing moment for me. I was focused on trying to keep JJ out of 3rd and long situations, 3rd downs in general, and opted instead for more of the passing game instead of putting the ball in specifically Mason's hands and letting him go kind of barrel through guys. So I think we'll see even more of that in the coming weeks. Obviously, things also change based on defenses you're playing, all of that stuff. But I think Aaron Jones will be used more in the receiving game than just an extra pair of hands while Jordan Addison's gone. Like, we had talked about that, like him being able to fill in a little bit, but it feels like they want him in that role for more than that. And he connected on that route with JJ that we'd seen in training camp multiple times. He said that is the same route that they were connecting on in training camp, where he comes out of the backfield and then goes deep instead of lining up wide. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, Aaron Jones, number 3 wide receiver, question mark.
I think you're totally right. They just love the versatility he makes for an easy target for a young quarterback, because he's going to catch and run. And it's not just, like you mentioned, those deep throws. We saw that so much in camp. I think when McCarthy hit Aaron on that touchdown, if I remember correctly, you said in the press box soon after, like we saw that a bunch all summer. Mm-hmm. But we also saw the screen game get repped a ton, just the quick passes that I remember seeing one attempt with Donovan Jackson getting out there in front of Aaron, but we didn't see too much of that against Chicago. I do wonder how much more we'll see of that going forward. I think 3 catches for Aaron Jones is on the lighter side of what we should be expecting. I thought they tried to spread the ball around a lot, but you saw McCarthy's connections or lack thereof with some of his targets. It seemed like whether it was nerves or just how he operates, he was rifling the ball in there on some of the passes where Jefferson dropped one over the middle. There was the low one, obviously, to Jefferson that caused the dispute early on third downs among Vikings fans of who's at fault. Was it Jefferson or McCarthy? Yeah. There was the one through Adam Thielen's hands on I think it would have been third down that he got drilled and dropped. So he just wasn't able to connect consistently with the wide receivers, but that will come with time. I think the easy stuff is going to be the scheme stuff to the running backs, to Hawkinson, and I think we'll continue to see all those guys be major parts of it. And I do think it was such a slow start. I remember at halftime, it was like 7 carries for 20 yards for all the running backs. And you're thinking, boy, they just spent all this money and this is all they can do. But O'Connell, especially on that final touchdown drive, where I think it was the one where Eric Wilson got a piece of the block. They started the 32-yard line. That was the one where O'Connell really seemed to lean into the run game and actually try to close the game out. And that was the scenario I was most fascinated to see because O'Connell's a quarterback. O'Connell loves to throw the football. I was really waiting to see if he would kind of get out of that and try to force JJ into, or not force, but lean into the rhythm JJ had. But Emily, he kept running the ball and they ran out the clock pretty much. Another
bright spot, and I know this was a little bit of a surprise for you. You hadn't been feeling too high on this entering the game, but Myles Price did well on punt return.
He absolutely did. Yeah.
Let's see here. 4 punt returns, total 68 yards. That was an average of 17. He also had 2 kick returns for an average of 24.5. Obviously, Ty Chandler had that big one at the end that ended up basically sealing the game for the Vikings. But Price is doing the job. He's doing the thing.
The Price is right, as they were saying in the press box, because we're known for humor among sports journalists. I think with Price, I was just wondering, could he do it? Emily, we counted it up before the game. It was 10 players for the Vikings made their NFL debut out of the 49 that they had active. That's over 20% of the available players were playing in their first NFL game, obviously including McCarthy. That also included an undrafted rookie who got $0 guaranteed. And they said, you know what? He's going to be our punt returner. And I was like, football mind was like, are you sure about that? And wow, this kid was steely-eyed Monday Night Football, didn't have the nerves that JJ seemed to have. He didn't seem to make a single mistake back there in terms of the fair catch decisions, waving people off. There was the moment there on the kickoff return at the end where everybody, the ESPN cameras got Kevin O'Connell trying to tell Ty Chandler, take it out. TJ Hawkinson's doing it. And then you catch Myles Price also doing it on the field. Like, come on, man, let's go. Like, that's an undrafted rookie in his first game coaching up a 4th-year veteran in Ty Chandler being like, hey, Land, let's go. Like, that to me was as impressive as anything he did actually with the football, which obviously included those good returns. I think his first return, I looked this up, was the Vikings' best punt return in the last 2 years. It was his first return. I think it was the one that went for 23 yards or whatever. I was wrong, certainly, about that. The kid looks like he's got it.
On the defensive side, Javon Hargrave, money's worth there. He ended up, I think, landing 2 sacks, and they came late. They had some troubles with Caleb Williams, who proved to be quite speedy last night and slippery. But Javon Hargrave, 2 sacks. Hold on, I'm trying to pull this up. Where did it go? Yep. 2 sacks for 12 yards lost. Another quarterback hit. Tackle for loss. He was worth the money, and that was a good investment there on the inside. Yep. He talked post game. I have to say, I was at the back of the scrum and could not hear him, but that's one I'm excited to listen back to here in the next 24 hours as we catch our breath and kind of hear what he thought about his debut.
Yeah, that defensive line, we had such high expectations for them, and maybe we should have been more mindful of the fact that Caleb Williams, as you said, is pretty slippery. It was like trying to catch a live chicken out there oftentimes. He's so slippery that it injured Blake Cashman. Blake Cashman pulls his hamstring while chasing down Caleb Williams on, I think, his 5th scramble and then, the second half or whatever, by the second half. He was just so hard to catch that there were probably 3 or 4 near sacks that they should have had before they actually got their first one. Whether it was Grenard on one of them, I think Ivan Pace nearly brought him down on another. they were getting pressure and they were generating unchecked pressure at times too. The classic Flores, scheming up free runners. It just wasn't working because Caleb can create. Caleb is such an immense, raw talent that you saw it produce the 10 straight completions to open the game. But then ESPN had the stat of he was off target on almost half of his throws in the second half. It's a big reason why the Vikings won. It's a big reason why I think this defense they're not going to do that to everybody, but they will get to people eventually, even Caleb Williams.
Caleb Williams appeared twice on the list of fastest ball carriers from Next Gen Stats. Last night, he had a 13-yard rush that clocked in at 20.45 miles per hour. That was 8 overall. And then his 9-yard touchdown rush there that would have been Chicago's first drive of the game, I think, 20.29 miles per hour. That was 11th overall. Nahshon Wright took home, we should have mentioned this earlier when we were talking about McCarthy, but Nahshon Wright took home fastest ball carrier of the week on that 74-yard pick six. So
he was moving.
he was not going to get caught.
I like to, after the game, O'Connell even kind of credits the Vikings. He goes, Nahshon learned how to play good zero coverage from Brian Flores here in Minnesota, because it was a zero blitz, as Kevin said. And you think Kevin O'Connell mentioned Nahshon kept his eyes to the quarterback, knew it was going to be a quick throw, like all the kind of tenets that you're going to coach. And obviously Nahshon would have practiced zero blitzes a lot with his 1 year last year in Minnesota. So yeah, it was funny that the Vikings even credited themselves a little bit on that one.
Was not a perfect game. We've already alluded to that a little bit.
Yeah.
There were some things that came up. We've talked about some of them. McCarthy obviously having to shake some rust off, get his feet under him there at the beginning. Williams cutting up the defense. The Blake Cashman injury, which Ben reported just a little bit ago. They're still waiting an MRI on that one to see how long he's going to be out, but it could potentially be a few weeks. The O-line was the other thing where there were certainly some moments where it was like, oh boy, did the investment pay off here? Is this group going to be able to click? They played without Christian Darrisaw. I know you have more on that from a conversation you had with him. Ryan Kelly exited at one point and had to go into the blue tent. He seemed fine. He returned to the game and spoke afterwards with some folks. But Andrew, what was the takeaways about the O-line from this game, considering what we saw, some of the pressure allowed on McCarthy, especially early in the game, and just how cohesive they were in their first performance together?
Yeah, talking to Brian O'Neill afterward, he had mentioned how loud it actually was, which you don't hear too often about Soldier Field. Maybe it's just because it was week one, new head coach, all those things, but it was pretty loud there to start on Monday night. Fans, at least the ones near us in the press box, seemed lubricated with their confidence, certainly in what they were yelling. And so it was rough out there for the Vikings initially. They had two delay of games in the first half. And I think that kind of stemmed from McCarthy just trying to settle into the operation, getting everybody going. So yeah, I think the offensive line as a whole needed to kind of settle in, but so much of it was about the quarterback, because McCarthy on those two opening third downs didn't even throw the ball. He had some time back there, tries to scramble from eventual pressure. And at one point, Ryan Kelly's walking off with him, talking with him. And I'd love to ask him, this week what they were talking about exactly. But I imagine it was something along the lines of, what did you see there? Why didn't you get the ball out? Like, why are you scrambling up the middle there when we kind of had you protected for enough time? So we'll see what happened exactly there. But eventually they settled in. And I think Justin School, the left tackle who was starting for Darrisaw, was the obvious weak link. The Bears seemed to target him, kind of scheming up single blocks for Odenigbo, who was the pass rusher on that side, who got, I think, it was the second sack on JJ on the second third down there. But School then also had a holding call that negated an 11-yard run. He gave up a hit on McCarthy that was flagged for roughing. When they get Darrisaw back, it's going to look much better, I think. You're not going to be able to pick on your weakest link. And that's why the Vikings did this. They did this, it seems like overkill of why would you replace all three starting interior spots at the same time? But it's because Kevin O'Connell's gone through years of seeing how you just get picked apart with your weakest link. If it's just one guy, they will find him, they will isolate him, and they will attack him. And they did that with Justin School last night. And I think that's why it looked pretty rough there, especially in the first half.
Yeah, and obviously on that side too, you have rookie left guard Donovan Jackson. I haven't looked too much at his numbers yet, but that's something I'll be curious to kind of see a little bit this week, is how the numbers looked for him in terms of that side of the line having some struggles with school. And what did you hear, Andrew, about Darrisaw? Because you guys saw him warm up before the game. The grass at Soldier Field, we thought, oh, is this where they want to have Christian make his return? But it sounded like that wasn't a consideration, that they had made the decision beforehand.
Yeah, Christian told me that, as you said, they knew going into that pregame workout that he was not going to play. It was pretty extensive. They had him under the watch of the training staff. They had him with Chris Cooper, the offensive line coach, who was putting him through different pass sets, the coach was mimicking a pass rusher. He was wearing a pad on his chest so Christian could punch him and all these things. And they really seemed to try to be stress testing him on that grass. And I asked Christian too, like, did that play any factor into your decision or their decision, the team's decision, to not put you out there? And he said, not at all. Actually, he would rather play on grass because it's more forgiving than the US Bank Stadium artificial turf. And they said, frankly, that the Soldier Field footing, at least from the player's perspective who played, was fine. Nobody was slipping around. It didn't seem to be really an issue at all. So Christian said, no, we just knew going into it that I wasn't ready yet. He said that my time's going to come. It's going to be soon. And they know that, because if it wasn't, they would have put him on IR and he would have been shelved for the first 4 weeks or whatever. So they know it's going to be within this first month of the season. It's just a matter of when. And what stood out to me about this decision was what Kevin O'Connell said last week. He said, we need to have a big picture look with Christian, obviously one of their best players. But also, you'd be putting him into his first game and then spinning him around into a short week into another game. I think the fact that they only had 6 days to turn around between games might have impacted too, not wanting to quite throw him out there right away.
We'll see if he will make his debut when the Vikings open at home next week on Sunday Night Football against the Falcons. In the meantime, you can read more about McCarthy's debut, everything you could possibly want to read about McCarthy's debut, probably up on the site right now, and McCarthy himself, if you did not catch that content from last week. Andrew, you had a notebook that I know included more stuff on the offensive line, some of those other tidbits that we shared throughout the podcast. I wrote about the running backs this morning. Lots of content on the StarTribune.com, also on the Strib Sports Instagram page. You can hear from McCarthy there, see our 3 keys to the game. We will talk to you again on the Access Vikings podcast sometime midweek once we talk to some coaches, talk to the coordinators, talk to players heading into this game against the Falcons. And until then.
We'll talk to you next time.